Even if you wanted to sell your soul, you still have to find someone who can pay the price. Want some help? Yes, no, maybe so.
If I were to ask you what Sylus's biggest fear is, how would you respond? Would you say is chili salad dressing? Or you'd have a hard time coming up with something because the guy himself is practically invincible? Hi, welcome to the second part of my deep dive. As I've said in the introduction video, the first two parts of this project, Home and Desire, are tightly interwoven. And if I weren't such a yupper box, they could probably be squeezed into a single video. More so because I formulated the two together. As you can see, all of my voice memos are from late December and early January-ish. So, when I was talking about what home means to Sylus, his connection to nature, memories, and all that, I was actually entering the realm of what desire means in its context as well. The real sneak peek to this section, however, is the one I did on Caleb and Sylus. By the way, thank you for all the interest you showed in that video. It was unexpected and more than what I expected. Obviously, but thank you. Because I move forward in this project by building up on my previous videos, I apologize if it sounds like a sales pitch, but you kinda need to watch them first in this order to make sense of this one. This time I'll just be referring to certain traits or themes I have already talked enough about and move on.
You don't tell me what to do.
I can tell you what to do.
You do not tell me what to do. You do not tell me what to do.
Or what?
I mean, you do have free will, obviously, but please spare me the pain of constantly repeating the very same stuff that I've already talked about in great detail. If you choose to start from here but are unsure why I'm reading Sylus in a certain way or which of his lines, actions, cards gave me that impression, the answer is most probably in the previous videos. With that being said, the outline of this video essay will be as follows. First, I'll be talking about what desire is, certain patterns about Sylus I noticed but didn't add to my Apple Crow video, how their intimacy operates. Then I'll move on to why thinking of Sylus as an animal is a crucial, or at the very least, a useful framework to understand him and his relationship with desire. The next section will build up on that and expand their dynamic with respect to Huizinga's definition of play from a cultural history standpoint. Then I'll delve a bit into Darkbound Souls. I also did a comparative side-by-side reading of the spicy parts of his Night of Secrecy and Darkbound Souls cards, but as you can see, the length got a bit out of hand, so instead of ending up with a 2-hour-long video, I decided to separate that and release it next week, but the two videos should be considered as one. Now, without further ado, as that famous philosopher Plato once said, let's get this bread. Now, without a doubt, desire is the key to Sylus's character. We tend to associate desire simply with one thing, or sexual urges come to mind, and because it's a word that is so commonly used, but is such a deep and layered notion that we'd benefit from looking into its meaning and etymology. It wouldn't shock anyone to hear that English is not my native language, and I never had to or thought to look into the etymology of desire until now. It's quite interesting. As you can see from this chart, it comes from awaiting what the stars will bring. It's both sweet and interesting how in stark contrast with the way Sylus is as a character. He's, for lack of a better word, anti-divine. He may engage in wishing upon a star if that's what MC wants, but only for fun, and even then he says MC should just tell him what she wished for. Or he considers himself to be unlucky and voices this out time and time again, even going so far as to say if she's to be next to him, he'll be draining the luck out of her. So instead of simply waiting to be handed things he's been wanting, he'd rather claw his way through and use whatever means necessary to get it himself through his own efforts. That's what he's been doing all his life anyway. So she should too just tell him her wishes or desires because he's more than capable of fulfilling them instead of, placing hopes on something divine or intangible. This is, of course, partly rooted in his being almost slain by religious fanatics in Philos, a mindless mob who would rather blindly follow someone else's preaching and don the cloak of justice to hide their greed while banishing desire and condemning others. But him urging MC to form bonds with the worldly, tangible, and material by using him instead of passively waiting will be important within this video's context as well. Merriam-Webster defines desire as conscious impulse toward something that promises enjoyment or satisfaction in its attainment, longing, craving, sexual urge, or appetite. Appetite is another keyword we have to keep in mind because it is linked to MC both metaphorically and physically. Something longed or hoped for, a usually formal request or petition for some action. Now, I was combing through different dictionaries and a Wikipedia page for desire to jumpstart my writing process, and there was this interesting bit. Desires are closely related to agency. They motivate the agent to realize them. For this to be possible, a desire has to be combined with a belief about which action would realize it. While there's more or less an agreement on the features like agency, freedom, motivation, and whatnot, which of them are essential and which are accidental is apparently up for debate. Meaning there are different theories or approaches on how to theorize desire. If it interests you, Stanford University's Encyclopedia of Philosophy is a good start. Provides many works from the literature to get you started. I'll link it below. For example, action-based theories support the claim that desires dispose us to actions without always bringing it about that we act. Or, according to pleasure-based theories, a person moved by a desire always enjoys what is desired or eagerly anticipates the desired satisfaction. Other details surrounding desire are the appetite, satiating, suppressing, or foreclosing it, drawing pleasure from it, and simply by having desires, we are bound to feel frustration. So when we're talking about desire, we aren't talking about simply wanting something tangible. While there are differing theories on what it is essentially, we can deduce that it implies agency, it may compel you to take action to realize it, there's promise or possibility of satisfaction, a strong motivation and attention, and an appetite for one's object of desire. It could be related to bodily desires like hunger, thirst, warmth, to material ones such as wealth. It could be about power, influence, titles, or emotional desires like feelings, positive or negative. Hence, the point is less about which theory holds true or which is more suitable, but it has a broad spectrum of meanings and implications that we should keep in mind throughout this video. Plus, it's not like I'm going to be able to settle a debate its scholars haven't been able to in a gacha game video essay. So, to recap, I've talked at length about Sylus's debilitating self-hate. He hates who he is because all he's been told throughout his life and in all of his timelines is that he's a monster and he's either to be used for his power or to be eradicated again because of his power. He's never found a place to belong until he met MC, and through her acceptance, he's slowly learning to accept himself. Another point from the video was how people deem Sylus as the king of consent, and while I don't necessarily disagree, what he's truly scared of is MC turning against them, or to put it bluntly, hating him. I also think, I hope I don't get cancelled for this. Fingers crossed. But consent is a rather irrelevant framework when it comes to interpreting Sylus and MC's dynamic. We should always keep in mind that we are experiencing the game through MC's lens, reading her lines and what she feels and consciously thinks, in the meantime, piecing together information from what limited info the love interests led us on into. So sometimes it can slip us by that Sylus can read the desire and greed in MC like an open book. Doesn't matter whether she's consciously aware of her desires, whether she's in denial, or they are still in the unconscious realm. Why he needs MC to spell them out, then, will be discussed later on in this video. I also noted that the importance he places on agency and free will partially stems from his own experience, the perpetual breach of his bodily autonomy, and partially from his fear of rejection. I'd like to expand on this a bit more. One pattern I came to notice, and something that can be read as consent on the surface, is that Sylus never inserts himself into MC's life. The very first time he tests the waters is the gift voice call when he reaches out to MC to let her know she's to receive a package from Luke and Kieran. MC is up in arms, asking if he's stalking her or the twins should just leave the package at the post office. Sylus's words are slightly playful when trying to be discreet at first, but later on explains that it's a gun he's been working on and she should be receiving it herself, trying his luck. But the second he feels she's really against it, he takes a step back. From then on, she's always presented with a choice when Sylus wants to send her something. She can either choose to have it delivered to her by someone other than Sylus, or to collect it herself the next time she visits the base. Now, this is interesting in itself because he is never the one to deliver these packages in the first place, which he could very well use as an excuse to meet up. We all know how much he wants to see her and spend time with her, and we also know how he's not above, so to speak, to do menial tasks or so busy that he can't set time aside every now and then for her. But he's aware that his presence itself is a threat to hers due to MC being a hunter, or to quote her, a law-abiding citizen. She uses the law-abiding card often at the beginning to keep Sylus at an arm's length, which later on turns into an inside joke. I'd argue it's not because she was scared of him deep down. I mean, compared to how scared others are when faced with him or even hearing his name, her reaction to Sylus is rather mild. I'd say she's more scared of the strong attraction she feels towards someone she isn't supposed to be feeling anything but contempt. Keep in mind, the immediate powerful attraction beyond reason is their thing. And he does voice out that he enjoys seeing MC frustrated, worried, or concerned. But it's never at the detriment of her, so I don't think he'd want to put MC in a truly perilous situation or want to see her at odds with other people in her life, especially knowing how important her values are for her and being a hunter is. Remember the immobilized card? Their evil linkage acts up. When MC's coworkers come back to the room unexpectedly, the two have to hide in the wardrobe, as Sylus helps her get out of the situation. After a lot of teasing and rage baiting, of course, but still, it was cute to see the second Sylus tells her to close her eyes, she follows suit, and you can see that maybe trust is not the right word, but at the very least, she finds comfort in his capability, despite the way she acts. There aren't many instances where he meets MC's friends or coworkers, but when he does, everyone is pretty much charmed by him, and he's careful with how he presents himself. I'm not a main story fiend yet, but we should also keep in mind how he's in the know about what happened in the Bloomshore district, or in Night of Secrecy card, MC finds out the mission Sylus is getting involved with has ties to Ever, for example. So yeah, he's very well aware of where both of them stand and what his being in MC's life would come to mean for her and the consequences that would follow. He's a smart cookie. People tend to think of him as solely a rich man. I've seen posts poking harmless fun At how in the Mortality's Tenderness event, everyone had a talent in something to attract a crowd, and Sylus just threw money and valuables around. But the wealth he amassed is simply a result of his detailed strategic thinking and planning, negotiation skills, and nonverbal awareness. He is extremely well articulated and well read. That is his talent. Anyways, what Sylus does is always wait for her to open the door first. The most he does is to cast a bait and hope she picks up the implication and plays along, but if she doesn't, then that's that. She needs to be the one to make the first move and the one to choose Sylus, because the last thing he'd want is her to regret choosing a monster like him, jeopardizing everything she holds dear. His teasing tone is also a playful and helpful way to keep a comfortable distance in the earlier stages, and MC adopts a similar tone with him as well, where depending on the other's response, they can either take a step closer to each other or back off, without risking their relationship that's already hanging by a thread. Let's be real. There are many ways where you can trace these points in his narrative. For example, because he's a provider, as I've defined here, and because how this act of providing is deeply rooted in his self-hate or his desire to be accepted and blessed by MC, he's very awkward at receiving gifts in the earlier stages.
Your package arrived. I'll have someone bring it to you. Never mind. I'll pick you up and... What? You gave me a gift. What?
And because he's never experienced a communal life or had to be accountable for someone else's well-being, he adorably fumbles when taking care of MC. Passionate Appraisal is an excellent exploration of this side of Sylus. It's a card where we see he has no idea how to change sheets during the Kindled. When you choose the I want to cool down option, you see him literally searching the net for what to do and follows with,
You're ill and only I can help you recover. Unlucky.
or after kissing MC, he says,
I'm not good at taking care of sick people. That kiss was me protecting my feelings. I hope it wasn't too bad.
and he has this such an apologetic and helpless look in his eyes that gets me every time. It was his way of sharing the pain with her. Ugly sobbing at 1 a.m. We could also talk about extensive care, where he's doing his best to make MC comfortable because she's on her period. The best part of that secret time recording is where he brings a silk blanket for her, because silk is the most expensive and the highest quality material, so she should be getting the best of the best. But it doesn't keep you warm at all, right? So upon MC's request, he switches to flannel. Or in the aged wine phone call where he sends MC a bottle of wine that is the same age as her, MC is about to be honest and say she wants to enjoy the wine with him, but stops herself mid-sentence and instead says she'll be keeping it until she's 100 and drink it with someone she cares about. Sylus is intrigued by her response, but doesn't immediately assume it'll be him. Instead, he simply wishes,
When the time comes, I hope I'll be lucky enough to try that vintage wine with you.
even in the birthday video call where they have reached a point where they are comfortable with each other like they've never been before, he still tells her that
Someone will always be by your side whenever you need, as your shield and destination in the fabric of eternity. He will walk every path with you if you run into problems you can't solve. Don't forget to tell him.
he always asks for her to keep him in mind, to consider him, to rely on him, and never forces his help or connections on her. Overtly, that is, since there were hints here and there that he had dealt with flies around her or lessened her workload by dealing with them beforehand, kind of like, clearing out the way. Or in so many times, we see her relying on the intel and firearms Silas provide. But correct me if I'm interpreting anything wrong. As I'll talk a bit more in detail in the following sections, what matters to Silas is what MC desires in every sense of the word and what follows after that. As he says in the phone call, as you wish, if what MC wants is to topple the world, then that's what they'll do. If she doesn't want to deal with the small, annoying obstacles on her way, then he'll kick them off the road. If it comes from her, he'll eat trashy cafe food or drink convenience store wine. One thing he won't do, however, is forcefully pry her open, but instead create a space or circumstance that would urge her to be more honest with him and, in a way, with herself. Honesty with regards to their desire is super important. I'll expand on it later. This is one of the reasons why the new lingering lust banner is so important in Silas's context, and the smell, the appetite, the animals flocking around Silas and their intimate scenes are so crucial. One discussion I often see online is whether Silas is a dominant or a submissive character, and each side presents different examples to prove their claim. What's my answer, you ask? Neither. And here's the thing, there's great benefit in framing Silas as an animal rather than a human. I don't mean this as he's literally an animal in human form or something, though I wouldn't be shocked if his being a beast of sorts is revealed to be true, considering how often he refers to people as humans, clearly using the word we use to refer to a species as if he's an altogether different species himself. However, this is just a detail that caught my attention, and there are not strong enough hints or strong enough of a proof in the canon to confidently draw conclusions on. So this is really like a detail that I caught on. We shall wait and see. What I mean by framing him as an animal is a way of looking at him and to interpret him through that metaphorical lens. Think of it as windows in your house. Through their shapes, sizes, and placement, they limit and shape the way or which part of the scenery you view that is outside your home, and the very same view might look different depending on the window. I did talk about his relationship to nature at length and how there's a certain disconnect from it. This disconnect and desire to return to it, as you may have guessed, is intricately linked to honesty, freedom, and authenticity. Both in Grassland Romance, which I hopefully will make a separate video on, and in Darkbound Souls, we see heightened senses being underlined, being free and more open instead of keeping up the pretenses the postmodern and capitalist way of living has forced on us, as in, trying to be or coming off as powerful, not feeble or weak, and relationships being found on this need for being always on guard, not being vulnerable, but finding an opening in the other. Relationships are now less like a conversation and more like justing in front of a non-existent crowd. In Grassland Romance, it's underlined through a nomadic way of living, which is deeply interwoven with nature, and in Darkbound Souls, the anomaly makes it so that the MC has heightened senses and becomes more like Silas in this manner. We know that his senses are very keen, be it his sense of hearing or scent or being quite sensitive to touch. We also see a heightened appetite in her as well, and the whole event, the lingering lust event, is them indulging their sensual side. And this sensual and emotional part, rather than the thinking, logical side, comes forward, which is associated, again, with freedom and honesty. And very interestingly, their complete understanding of each other may be referring to this. Until now, I assumed Silas and MC understanding each other or being on the same page was more of a conscious act that is found in thinking and knowing, accumulating memories and building a life together. Assumed it was the act of building a shared life. But as I was working on this video, now I'm thinking maybe it refers to them actually being attuned to each other in a way animals are, a more sensual, instinctual, physical connection that predates language and culture in a sense. So maybe what they will be achieving through conscious effort is this state of primal connection. The heavy emphasis on Silas and MC being the same, being kindred spirits, having similar tastes, etc., doesn't need any repeating. And in the current timeline, we see Silas often assuming a mentor type of role, for lack of a better word, because he is in a completely different manner than Zane. From protocols to intel to fine arts and culinary knowledge, everything about the material world is of interest to him. And as I've mentioned in my Apple Crow video, he's ready to present whatever he has to MC and to hold her hand as she learns about them. Now, I say in current timeline because if we go back to Dragon Silas in Where Drake Shadows Fall, it is MC who is teaching Silas about the world. In Where Silver Wings Rest, they seem to be more on equal footing with a lot of give and take due to both of them having long lifespans and rather similar financial means. And now, Silas has amassed this inconceivable wealth, refined himself as a human, which is, I'd argue, motivated by MC's words in Where Silver Wings Rest. You don't know the saying then? What a person uses reveals their taste, ability, and status. Then he goes on to become a stronghold in a dangerous environment, hence the ruler of the N109 zone. Still, the goal of this mentoring and what he eventually seeks is equal companionship. And as he so sweetly emphasizes in this social media post, the only precious thing that nothing or no one else can rival is MC. And I have to stress, he seeks equal companionship, not a balanced one. Not the, oh, you're good at that and I'm good at this, so we balance each other out kind, but in a we're both good at everything that matters way. That's why he's adamant on gently helping her to reach the level he's at. He wants her to get much better at riding a motorcycle or shooting and full contact fighting, because if she chooses to stay beside him, shaking off pesky flies will be an item they'll never fully cross off their to-do list. He wants her to refine her palate when it comes to food and wine, develop appreciation for cars and antiques, wear the finest clothes and jewelry, I don't know, go on a safari or vacation at the mansion he literally won from nobility, as you read in Darkbound Souls. Silas wants to foster an appetite in MC for everything the material world has to offer that can appeal to their senses and minds, and not only satiate that appetite, but be the only person who is capable of doing that. And eventually, for MC to become the kind of person who has immense confidence in herself. Now, before I move on to the next section, you might wonder whether Silas's want for equal companionship is clashing with his position as a mentor or not. The thing is, teaching someone is never a one-way interaction, and while MC may not know about the intricacies of, I don't know, winemaking or jewelry market prices, she teaches Silas so many things in turn, including how to be a two-person team, the importance of celebrations, and the beauty of caring for one another. And the end goal is always to reach the same level. However, while Zane and MC's dynamic is found on balance, and Zane assuming more of an educator, tamer position who contains a free-spirited MC, which does things to me. The way Silas goes about it is through play. And this is another reason why I think it's crucial we think of him as an animal, because that's how animals love and learn, through playing and pretending. But what exactly do I mean by play, and which of Sylus and MC's interactions count as play? I'm glad you asked. The word might seem pretty self-explanatory, but it wouldn't be me if I didn't whack your brain with definitions and useless stuff now, would I? Thinking of Sylus and MC's interactions through the lens of play brought back Huizinga's Homo Ludens, a study of the play element in culture, to mind that I read back in... I don't know, like when I was an undergrad or something. Anyway, excellent book. He opens it with, play is older than culture, for culture, however inadequately defined, always presupposes human society, and animals have not waited for man to teach them their playing. Excuse the gendered language. He then continues to ruminate on play as the foundation of civilization, of all kinds of human actions. War, love, philosophy, art, language, rituals, myths, whatever you can think of. He continues to define play as a voluntary activity or occupation executed within certain fixed limits of time and place, according to rules freely accepted but also binding, having its aim in itself and accompanied by a feeling of tension, joy, and consciousness that it is different from ordinary life. We venture to call the category of play one of the most fundamental in life. Now, this is quite the densely packed definition, but encapsulates Huizinga's approach to culture through the lens of play, so let's break down the key points. 1. Agency, meaning it has to be a voluntary activity. 2. Constraints on time and place. There's a beginning and an end to the play, and there has to be some sort of a playground, so to speak. 3. Rules. Related to, again, agency, you are free to accept the rules and join in the play or not, but once you do, you have to abide by the rules, and the rules are absolute during the play. 4. Play is engaged in for the sake of play, not because it has value or there's a goal to be reached. You may learn or get something out from it, but it is secondary to the play itself. Huizinga isn't super clear or consistent with regards to the function of play, so I personally interpret it as play has a function, but it doesn't detract from its disinterest in it. 5. Tension needs to accompany play. It brings uncertainty and a chance for the player to strive to win, a certain level of competitiveness to bring the game to an end or solution. Tension and resolution are crucial. 6. Players are consciously aware that play is removed from real life and that there's an element of pretend. But it doesn't stop the player from being fully immersed or lost in the game. Now, as you can see, almost everything Sylus and MC engage in can be considered as play, including their banter later on in the relationship timeline. Their play is also always controlled and calculated. Sylus is the more powerful of the two, and that can make it seem like the scale tips toward him, but his presence reads more like a safety net than an overpowering or limited one. Depending on the type of play they engage in, the act would need varying levels of trust or vulnerability, and it's also why it makes perfect sense for Sylus to be interested in being experimental when it comes to intimacy. Think of the in your ear secret times. Deliberate wink. Through play, parties can experiment with where the other party's boundaries lie, how much they can push or breach without it being a violation of the rules or at the detriment of the other, judge their capabilities and mental fortitude.
Now it's not important at all. I won. Don't tell me.
I won't go back on what I promised you. However, games are fun because of how thrilling they can be. Your attitude makes things boring.
Midnight Stealth, right? Let's think back to the brooch incident when Sylus and MC first met, and she's trying to get Sylus to agree to let her accompany him to the auction. They make a deal. If she finds the brooch within 24 hours, he'll fulfill her wish, and it's clear that it's only a deal on the surface. There are hints in the memoria itself, but as Sylus confirms in his latest birthday card, Rainlit Night, he wouldn't have the thing MC is searching for on him if he didn't want her to find it. Or even before that, being the man he is, he wouldn't even make a deal in the first place. Now, this is clearly a play he set up.
Bastard.
With a time limit, 24 hours, in an enclosed space, the base. For MC, it's an important deal, a test she has to pass, but she agrees to the play. She upholds the rules imposed.
I doubt I'm breaking any rules.
It is also a playful way for Sylus to assess her in a safe environment. Their banter is kind of a play as well, a game they play with words and implications to be picked up by the other, true intentions to be discovered under layers, but because they know each other so well, because, they're the same, there's actually not much to be discovered, only points to be connected, and on MC's part, confidence to put her finger on the implication she thinks to be true. In the earlier stages of their relationship, the banter is less a play and more a convenient tool to keep a certain distance, as I mentioned, to hide and to reveal intentions and implications until they get to know each other more and establish a trusting relationship. Now, it wouldn't be surprising when I say everything between Sylus and MC are buried under layers and layers of implications, metaphors, and veiled truths. So many instances that filled 2 of my little notebooks, but an early example of their mode of communication would be the banqueting messages where MC is anxious about the auction, losing sleep over the possibility of something going wrong. From Sylus's point of view, simply taking her to the banquet should be enough for her to rest easy. He knows that she knows how strong capable Sylus is, and he wouldn't be saying yes to her just because. She should have picked up on the implication of him even striking a deal with her to mean that he had faith in her skills, her ability to stand her ground, and he'll be there with her during the event anyways. Upon finding out that she didn't get it, Sylus puts it into words, and as a response, MC says she feels comforted by what he said. His reply always cracks me up. He doesn't openly admit that this is obviously his way of caring, and he's like, well, if the shoe fits, if that's how you feel or whatever. But he still adds that she shouldn't let it go to waste, which is practically admitting. And his last message, I assume, is supposed to serve as an ego boost, because imagine the boss man of Onychines, the ruler of the M109 zone. Sylus, bossman himself, says he's counting on her. I'd literally shit my pants. Now, there are times when Sylus reminds the anxious MC that there's no need to be scared of others when she isn't even afraid of him. And she's always like,
You're goddamn right.
Sylus goes to great lengths to interpret her actions and read between the lines as well. Apologies for bringing up these seemingly unimportant calls and messages, but I love how much they tell us about the characters. In the instant noodle, instant noodle video call, Sylus reaches out to MC about the used seasoning packets she left behind after eating noodles when she's at the base.
But there's something I'm confused about. You complimented the chef last time you were here. So, why didn't you order anything? You made a cup of noodles for some reason. How did I find out? You forgot to throw away the used seasoning packets. I thought you wanted to let me know.
He's puzzled because he thought she enjoyed the food his chef cooked and wonders why she chose noodles over getting something prepared. It's clear that he thought that the packets she didn't throw away were supposed to be a message for Silas to pick up on, that it was her way of signaling she didn't like the food after all. She says the ones she makes taste better, so I think it was an honest mistake or carelessness on her part, but still interesting to see how much attention he pays and reads into even the most subtle actions or lines. Or in cooking messages, instead of directly asking Silas to cook for her, she keeps tagging him under cooking videos. She's so real for this. Another favorite of mine is this social media post that I think you unlock using the flower posing glint. One of the reply options is MC doing reverse
We're besties.
Uno on Silas and says Mephisto will be staying with her. He asks if he can come as well, saying Mephisto has separation anxiety. Whatever helps you sleep at night, sweetie. And the thing is, MC is not dumb either, so it's a two-person game they're playing. The Dangerous Night market messages are a great example of this as well. He knows that she knows that he knows kind of thing, yet it's comfortable, it's fun, and both are very competitive by nature, so this push and pull satisfies that part in them as well. As their relationship progresses, we witness the banter turning into a play from it simply being playful. They do it for the sake of banter itself, to create tension and draw pleasure from it. You can think of Rosie Hughes, for example, or another example would be in Darkbound Souls, where MC is tossing and turning when he asks,
What's wrong, sweetie? The mattress isn't to your liking.
and when she says it's not the bed, he responds with,
Don't tell me it's the person keeping you company.
He also often uses the word territory, similar to an animal claiming its space and being protective of it, and welcoming another into the space requires trust and acceptance. There are fans who interpret MCs claiming Silas's territory or treating his underlings as her henchmen, as Silas submitting to her. But to me, Silas interprets this as a sign of her love, as acceptance, and wanting, expecting more from him, because the way he sees it, that's his function in this relationship as a provider. As I mentioned in the first part, Silas interprets everything through a transactional lens, but wants to go beyond this and be truly free with MC. So her leaving traces and everyday items at Silas's place is their territories merging, them taking another step towards being on equal footing. Now, as I was writing this, I hadn't played Night of Secrecy yet. I had seen the Kindled video actually before I was a player of the game, but played the whole story just for this video. And that card is all about their territories merging, and I'll definitely come back to it. Now, we can also try to interpret their body language. We often see or are informed through narration that they engage in play punching, biting, tumbling, but it almost always goes both ways. I say almost because, as I've mentioned, Silas is afraid of his own claws or fangs, his physical power and overwhelming presence. He fears hurting her, but we still see them brawling and competing in many instances, yet never in a way where one has the absolute advantage over the other. Think of Captivating Lesson card where she's training with Silas, Abyssal Mark, Improvised Flow, Primordial Chaos, Rosie Hughes, etc. One moment it's MC who's on top setting the rules for the play, in another it's Silas. If he is to do something that might overpower MC, he balances it out with something else. It could be kneeling, lying so that she can be on top, or propping her up so they are more face to face than him towering over her. Now, if you pay attention to all the bets or details they get into and who wins and what the reward is, you will see that what matters to Silas is the play and what that play will lead them to do. If he desires the reward, he wins, just like he does in Darkbound Souls. Remember, if he is to win the race, she'll turn off her hunter's watch, and he'll get to spend more time with her, uninterrupted time with her. Or in the house section, the winner to the gun assembling bet gets to decide where they will go, and he'll willingly lose if she's to spend all day with him. Both know that what matters is that there's playful tension, they draw pleasure from it, and they knowingly comply to the rules and willingly pretend as if this is, real competition, one where there are high stakes. And it's pretty much in line with the way Huizinga defines play in great detail. Now I can already hear you grumbling and rolling your eyes and wondering why I have been going on and on and on about play, but I wanted to dedicate this section to play because, for one, it's the very foundation their dynamic is built upon. But more importantly, from what I see in online discussions, we have a very impoverished and painfully simplistic view on what consent is, and it's worse the way some people employ that concept to fictional works that it's important to make this distinction that this is a play Sylus and MC both enter willingly, knowing the risks, if there are any, that entail. I wanted to dedicate a section to the new Darkbound Souls card from the Lingering Lust event, but considering it's the second card that prominently focuses on their intimacy in bed, the first one being Night of Secrecy, judging from the kindled I saw, I wanted to see whether it would be fruitful to do a comparative reading. Now, as you may know, I wasn't a player during the event, so I had to rely on YouTube. I will be using Lindify's recording of Night of Secrecy, so a big thank you to the owner of the account. And I have to say, the card was quite different than what I expected. Night of Secrecy, I assume, is our first time seeing Sylus and MC getting this intimate in bed, right? I saw that Misty Invasions event was before this on the game's YouTube channel, but was that a spicy card? I don't know. Let me know. At the very least, it's his first time visiting MC's house, and they are even doing grocery shopping for necessities and spending a long, uninterrupted period of time together in Lincoln, which is a huge deal in so many ways. It was nice to get confirmation on my thoughts regarding the territory stuff, which is pretty much spelled out here, and their heartbeats syncing. Now, Silas's heartbeat on the main screen has always sounded so erratic to me, sometimes beating at 70-ish BPM, which is close to a human heartbeat, sometimes at 120s, or there are times when it sounds like two heartbeats that are out of sync juxtaposed. I wasn't sure if I should merge that thought with his, if our heart rates sync up, then maybe we'll have an easier time resonating line after you check his heartbeat on the main screen. But when the narration in Night of Secrecy has a line that's dedicated to it, I thought, maybe that is the case. And meanwhile, in Darkbound Souls, MC is on a mission to crack down on an illegal organization called Ashes. The mission is tough and takes longer than she expects, but surprisingly, Sylus visits her in Valerio. MC finds out that there's a bounty placed on her head by a member named Grey Mist, so they spend their time mixing business and pleasure. The whole event revolves around desire, honesty, and intimacy for all love interests, and especially considering how secretive or closed off Sylus is, getting into his head a bit more and the two being open and vulnerable with each other makes his card and event a goldmine. Now, talking about honesty, I'll be honest with you too. I had been putting this essay off for so long, despite all the notes I took, but this card was what urged me to go back to the trenches, aka video essaying. But I don't know, maybe that was for the best, because then I wouldn't be talking about Darkbound Souls, which is a very important card in this context. Anyway, where do I even begin? MC is rightfully disappointed that the work dragged on and she got hurt on top of it all, but she's pleasantly surprised to see Sylus. It wouldn't be reading too much into it to say he is probably there, partially because he already got wind on the bounty over her head and was even informed on her injury. He not only hoards wealth, but intel as well, and he probably wanted to be there to safeguard her in case anything goes wrong. And the story as a whole mirrors how they experience intimacy in bed. As Sylus points out, they do love a thrill, even when they're on a vacation or a getaway to wind down. Not that they seek it out. This is an important detail. The trouble always finds them, but it's also true that they don't avoid it and take pleasure in it instead, turning it into, you guessed it, a play, a bonding opportunity. Throughout the card, MC is frustrated. She is frustrated that one of the Ashes members has slipped her grasp, that she couldn't wrap up work as neatly as she hoped for. This puzzled me greatly, because why would she feel frustrated, so much so to lose sleep over it for days upon seeing the bounty on her head, instead of, I don't know, feeling angry, scared, annoyed? And that's not the only reason behind her frustration. She also has cravings, she's constantly hungry, she's competitive, and although it's not spelled out explicitly, we can deduce from Sylus's lines that she's sexually frustrated as well. But when you list these instances one after another, you can see all of it has to do with her greed and appetite, literally and figuratively. The bounty and being the prey probably triggers a fear that is buried deep inside her too. I have mentioned in the home video that what Sylus is drawn to in MC is her vitality and lust for life, but explored it in its relation to nature and wanted to leave the desire framework for this one, though they are pretty much two halves of a whole. The moment they unite, we see he's in such high spirits, their banter is quick and witty, he immediately gets into the captain-subordinate play, and I gotta say, it does sound pent up as well. It's as if the moment they see each other, the floods are at the gates, but they're keeping a disaster waiting to happen at bay. Gives me that kind of vibe. And much like her other desires, Sylus is there to deal with her hunger. Throughout their vacation, he alternates between satiating that appetite, taking her to restaurants, competing with her, feeding her intel, all the while continuing to fanning the flames and subtly moving the chess pieces on board to get her to take action with regards to Grey Mist. Now, I've seen people being jokingly upset that there wasn't an option where MC chooses to shoot Grey Mist for real in the story. But of course, that can never be an option, right? Not because it's violent or she's an angel reincarnate or something like that, but it would clash with her position in Sylus's narrative and what the card is trying to tell us about desire and being in command. It's about him being true to his desires, not facing away from them, versus MC resisting the temptation. She kinda functions as the anchor to Sylus in that regard. It was curious that in the main event story, he says returning favors isn't his style. Now, of course, he's talking about the birds here, but there are other past instances where he says he doesn't bother retaliating. Still, right when MC is pointing her gun at Grey Mist, he goes on to ask whether she wants to return the favor or not. Do you see what's happening here? Let me take it from the top one last time. MC and the team is officially done with the mission. She is upset that she missed her chance to go on a vacation with Sylus, but he shows up at the door unexpectedly. And how does she find out that there's actually a member of Ashes alive and kicking out there, and he went and put a bounty over her head? Sylus is the one showing her. He's the one who'd have an easier access to dark web and be informed about bounties anyway, and if he wanted to keep it from her, he very well could, or if he wanted to get rid of Grey Mist, he could manage it behind the scenes. He tried to do so in Night of Secrecy and almost succeeded. MC was just lucky that a message arrived as she was snooping on Silas's phone when he was in the shower. Now, as you can see, from the start, the whole thing with Grey Mist was all a test. He slowly and carefully set the scene for MC, who at the beginning was determined to do things by the book and informing the association. As they continue to spend time, if you ever decide to give the story another go, you can pay attention to how subtly but surely he coaxes MC, feeds into her frustration, all the while satisfying her, keeping a delicate balance, all to bring her to a point where she finally yields and asks Sylus to take her to where Grey Mist is. And when finally her gun is pointing at the man who kept her tossing and turning all this time, he continues to tell her what anyone in such a state would die to hear.
He won't be scurrying off anymore. Do whatever you want to him. Why aren't you shooting? He used everything to get his revenge. You don't want to return the favor. Don't you want his life? You can do that. I promise your association will never find out. At this moment, you aren't restrained by any rules. The choice is yours.
English VA was chef's kiss here. Mwah. I should stress that I don't think Sylus cares either way, whether she shoots the guy or not. The only thing he's interested in is what her choice will be when she's free from all inhibitions and her reasoning behind that choice. He often says he's more interested in MC and what she chooses to do, that she's always fresh and full of surprises to Sylus. But in this card as well, when he was talking about the old nobility who gambled away their mansion and MC was commenting on how the whole house was like a museum, Sylus replies with,
The real exhibit should be their century of infighting and political intrigue. Tales of murder, lust, and hoarding wealth that bordered on obsession. Aren't those more captivating than these lifeless relics?
As you can see, his interest lies in somewhere else rather than the results. Let's rewind time a bit and think back to where Silverwings rest. Sylus takes MC to the underworld to care for her, and she's seeing the graveyard of discarded fates for the first time, and they're talking.
Sometimes, I think the underworld's fiends are simply people abandoned by fate. Since they're not embraced by it, they're free from the mortal world's moral constraints. They only live for their desires.
Here, Sylus says that underworld is, in a way, a place, or more like the only place, where the discarded beings can exist. The ones who are ousted from society, so to speak. And because they're excised from communal life, they see no meaning in adhering to the social contract and normative rules and choose to live accordingly to their desires instead. Because communal life is a negotiation between you, your wants, needs, desires, as well as others, and a social contract everyone has agreed upon or is subjected to. So I'd wager he's interested in that tension and possible conflict between you versus the world, and his interest in humans always has to do with vitality, with being alive, and how messy and conflicting the truth and life itself actually is. He's fascinated by humanity stripped from the decorum and the flowery veneer. The threats that keep finding the two they welcome and turn into play are never innocent, simple thrills like, I don't know, doing extreme sports or not stopping at a red light, there is always at least one person or vehicle blowing up in the background. On a random Tuesday night, even.
Someone will die.
Of fun.
And of murder.
There's gonna be beer, pumpkins.
Bloody goblins.
Fake ones.
And I feel it in my heart why fans call this game Love and Depression, but Sylus and MC's case reads differently to me in a way how death is interwoven into the very fabric of their dynamic. It's not only that they are bound to die or lose one another in some way, as it happens in other love interests, myths, and timelines, but death itself is a constant presence in their everyday life. Sylus and MC not only are bound to kill one another in the grand scheme of narrative, but in everyday life, they make a game out of it, always tiptoeing around that thin membrane that quietly stretches between life and death, drawing pleasure from and satisfaction out of it. So it only makes sense that their intimacy in bed mimics this facet that constitutes the core of their relationship. Okay, I think this is a good place to stop. The continuation, as I've said, will be up next week, and I'll be specifically looking into Night of Secrecy and Darkbound Souls. I'm not super sure about YouTube's policy with regards to which words can be used in the videos. Intimacy has a broad meaning, but I don't know if I should use the word sex so many times. So when I say intimacy, please take that as me meaning a very specific aspect of intimacy. And also, I apologize if there are differing qualities in sound or light or scenes. I have been recording these in between other stuff, so bear with me. I don't have a set up for me. So thank you so much for tuning in. As always, you can reach out to me through my straw page or TikTok. Know that I appreciate your support and see you next week.